Read the disclaimer thing. Read it. I would like to open this video by inviting you to engage in a bit of a thought experiment. I want you to imagine that one of your favorite movie directors has just announced an upcoming movie, but that they did so in a unique way. Perhaps they started a fake YouTube series with one of the actors from the movie masquerading as an amateur project. Or they put out a piece of media in a different medium, such as a book or a video game. Or perhaps they made some fake trailers for movies that exist in the universe of their upcoming movie and played those trailers in theaters as if they were real. That last one actually happened with the masterpiece that is Tropic Thunder. At the end of any of these examples is the big reveal of what the upcoming movie is and who is directing it. You are fucking hyped. Now, imagine that some amount of time later, the movie in question is unceremoniously cancelled. It goes without saying that this would leave a rather large hole in the collective hearts of all who were looking forward to it. A hole that others may wish to fill. And filled it is, as new indie directors swoop in and attempt to give audiences what they had hoped to receive from the original movie. They do this, however, by simply creating new, full-length movies in the style of the fake trailers we were previously shown. The more observant among us may attempt to point out that the teasers were never meant to represent the final product. They were only meant to give us a glimpse into the world and characters that would inhabit said product. These voices are drowned out as the hordes of desperate fans are more than happy to have this surrogate to fill that void. This may all seem like a far-fetched scenario, and yet it is one that video game developer Bloober team has latched onto and rode to stardom. So much so that, returning briefly to our thought experiment, imagine that this new director became so successful with their recreations of those initial teasers that they are eventually brought in to fully make the movie that was initially canceled all those years ago, or at least an entry in the same series, with the original director left working as a FedEx delivery man or something. Yes, the patron saint of spooky walking simulators has officially managed to hold the W key all the way into the position of remaking Silent Hill 2, while the game that the original playable teaser, or PT for short, was trying to advertise is lost forever. It may surprise you after that over-the-top and perhaps a smidge pretentious introduction to learn that I do not dislike Bloober Team. I have played both Layers of Fear games and enjoyed them. I really liked Observer. I watched a friend play the Blair Witch, and I've seen some gameplay of the Medium, which I would play, but it's next gen, and I currently only own a PS4 and a laptop that struggles to run Cookie Clicker. Still, to say that Bloober Team, and every other developer that has made a PT clone since the cancellation of Silent Hills, has missed the point would be a massive understatement. Perhaps it's been a simple matter of being unable to see the forest for the trees, but there was so much to PT beyond a looping hallway and a spooky dead lady that hasn't even been attempted in its imitators. And for the life of me, I don't know why. Perhaps it's unfair to compare a seasoned game development veteran to various indie studios, but at times it feels like none of them are interested in exploring anything deeper than surface-level horror themes, basic puzzles, and walking through pretty detailed hallways. Here's the thing. PT was not scary because a dead lady jumped out and went blah 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 blah. It was scary because you were afraid that a dead lady was going to jump out and go blah 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 blah. This may seem like a semantic difference, but it really isn't. PT created a sense of dread that I've never really felt while playing any of the games that were inspired by it, Layers of Fear included. Games like Layers seem almost terrified of losing the player's interest, a problem that frankly most horror games suffer from, and thus end up including far too many jump scares, to the point where the player soon becomes numb to them. Sure, they will still trigger the caveman fight or flight response that the horror genre has been banking on for years to give cheap thrills. Me, I've never really cared for jump scares. As I said, they're cheap and they're easy to create. I much prefer the slow burning kind of horror. Yet, since jump scares trigger the sharp exhaling loud mouth noise and unintentional muscle jerk thing, it's easy to claim that they're doing just as well at spooking you as something more cerebral. The difference, obviously, is that jump scares don't stick with you any longer than the time it takes for the adrenaline to wear off. This can be proven with a classic jump scare, the bathroom medicine cabinet. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The character is brushing their teeth, then they close the medicine cabinet, and when they look up from spitting, there's a goober standing behind them ready to grab them and shove something sharp up their ass. These kinds of scares are pretty good at making you jump. Maybe less so these days since we're prepared for it. But these scenes are often subverted by replacing the goober with the character's spouse or roommate or something. And I don't have any data to back this up, but I'm willing to bet that if we filmed two identical scenes, one with the monster and one with the spouse, and measured heart rates and brain activity and whatnot in the viewers, they'd be pretty similar. And assuming the monster version of the scene ended just as quickly as the non-monster version, as it usually does with the character spinning around and seeing nothing, the raised vitals would probably return to normal at about the same rate as well. Now that I've belabored the point long enough, I'd like to walk it back slightly by pointing out that jump scares are not inherently bad. They can be used to simultaneously capitalize on a buildup of suspense and also break that tension. Like most things, it's all about pacing. And pacing is something that PT understood while Bloober team does not. Flinging a corpse at the player every 10 seconds like they're the family of a deceased person and you're a mortician who just realized that their credit card has declined gets stale fast. But at the same time, tension can only be stretched so far until it becomes boredom. So how do we best build up that tension? Music, atmosphere, storytelling, level design? Well, a contrast between these and other things is best, I would say. PT wasn't tense because it had a looping hallway. It was tense because of what it did with the looping hallway. It understood that less is more, that subtle changes are better than in-your-face ones. PT broke up its tension with jump scares far less often because it was more confident in its other elements than its imitators seemed to be. And given that it's one of the main gameplay elements that they share, let's talk for a bit about the concept of the looping hallway. One of my favorite horror tropes is non-Euclidean geometry. House of Leaves is one of my favorite novels for this reason. That, and it's just a well-written masterpiece. Now, before someone crawls out of their basement to correct me in the comments, I am aware that the term non-Euclidean geometry is somewhat misused here. I also know that a fuck ton of words and terms we use today had different meanings 100 years ago. Words change and are often nestled into concepts that don't have any readily available phrases to describe it. Though I will concede that in this circumstance, that may not necessarily be the case. I've also heard Escher-like and liminal space used to describe this concept, and those fit too. But I digress. Anyway, where was I? Oh, right, unukulele geodudes. I remember the first time I played Portal and saw what it could do with your sense of perspective. I'm not going to claim that I was unique in this, but I remember immediately thinking about how this kind of thing could be used in a horror game. I was very pleased the first time I played some indie horror game. I think it was called Wooden Floors or something, and I walked into a room, looked around, and left only to find that the door I had used to enter this room no longer led to where I'd entered it from. And then the same thing was done a gajillion times in a gajillion games, and it just... There's a scene in the movie Grave Encounters where the protagonists, who have been locked inside an asylum to create some in-universe ghost hunting show, finally give in and try to leave. They take a gurney and ram it into the front door several times until it bursts open. Instead of leading to the outside that they know for a fact was beyond that door, it simply leads to another hallway. I love that moment. The panic and denial on the characters is just great. The thing is, PT wasn't just unsettling when you entered a loop and found that something had changed. It was unsettling when you entered a loop and found that nothing had changed. Maybe it comes down to how quickly you solve the puzzles or cross certain story triggers, but I'm willing to bet that if you dug into the code for the game, you'd find that it has a certain number of mandatory loops at certain points just to instill a sense of unease in the player. This unease may quickly lead to boredom in some, but, and this may be the meanest thing I say this entire video, if you become bored that quickly, this may not be the genre for you. Back to Grave Encounters. It would be just as unsettling, for the viewer at least, if the doors opened and everything was as they remembered it. In fact, the sequel pulled a trick just like that, and it's my favorite part of that movie. The point I'm trying to make here is that a lot of what Bloober Team does is not only right up my alley, it's right up my sidewalk, right up my stairs, right up into my bed, and right up my anus. But, just like with the jump scares, the key is restraint. Unlike with PT, there are very few moments in those games where nothing is changing and nothing is trying to spook you. Obviously, the openings of the games don't count. Yes, there are moments in PT that go into absolute batshit bonkers territory, and I would even argue that Layers of Fear does these moments a lot better than PT ever did. But those moments are just kinda all there is to Layers of Fear. The story feels like an afterthought at the best of times, and a tired retread of horror cliches at the worst of times. Like, wow, mentally ill people exist. I look forward to you not exploring that concept any further than in, and believe me, I'm not someone who throws this word around lightly, problematic portrayal that would even make M. Night Shyamalan blush. But I'm not here to go in-depth on Bloober Team as a developer and their history. I could point out how they tread the line between homage and ripoff, then snort that line through a crazy straw and devolve into "That's the thing! From the thing!" far too often. I could point out that them building their entire careers on copying the homework of their peers, and then filing for a patent for basic gameplay elements, and then proceeding to brag about how others will have to then ask them for permission to use it, is a level of irony that may very well cause the fabric of reality to collapse. But that's not the point of this video, or of this channel. The point is to ramble about random thoughts I've had and leave the in-depth analyzing to people far more talented than I am. At the end of the day, this isn't about whether or not Layers of Fear is good, which would be entirely subjective. It's not even really about measuring the talent of Bloober Team, or any other devs of looping hallway simulators, myself included. I made some crappy Amnesia custom story that did the concept of a looping hallway getting more and more weird before even PT did it.
Wait a minute, what? Wait a minute, what? What the hell?
That's not me trying to self-promote. I haven't dabbled in game development for years, and I doubt I'll ever give it another crack. I only want to point out that I'm not hating on Bloober Team or the kind of games they make. Instead, I wish to illustrate that I've never seen a more spot-on case of someone trying to copy something successful while completely missing a lot of what made it successful in the first place. Hell, I know this is going to seem like the kind of spicy hot take designed solely to piss people off, but I'd say the likes of Five Nights at Freddy's has more in common with PT than anything Bloober has ever created. The depth of both the storytelling and the gameplay, complex enough that I wouldn't fault anyone for accusing them of making it up as it goes along. An accusation that one could reasonably throw at old Koji Bro himself. Remember when PT was announced and pretended to be some weird little indie project? Remember when it was filled with complex puzzles that required a community to come together and figure it out, leading to some random streamer stumbling across the true ending while her fans watched in awe? Remember when the devs pointed out that the full game would have more traditional gameplay elements beyond just walking around? Bloober team clearly does not remember any of this. They only remember a game where hallways looped and dead ladies jumped out and snapped your neck. And that's a shame. It's a shame not only because it shows that they missed the point of why people liked PT so much, but also because I honestly think they're talented enough to make something much deeper than what they have if they just put their minds to it. I'd also like to make it clear that this video isn't just me still being salty that Silent Hills was cancelled. I'm over that. We got Death Stranding out of it, which isn't everyone's cup of tea, but frankly, I like the idea of Kojima making original IPs over working on established ones. Point is, I had the idea for this video a while before they announced the Silent Hill 2 remake, so this isn't just a knee-jerk hate reaction to that. Also, they announced in the same stream Silent Hill Townfall, which is by these motherfuckers, and I just... Anyway, like I said, I've had this thought rattling around the back of my head for a while, as well as the idea for this channel. It was the almost prophetic full circle announcement of Bloober Team making the Silent Hill 2 remake that brought it back to the forefront. I would honestly be completely unsurprised if they revealed that they're removing combat from the game and simplifying the puzzles. I hope this doesn't happen. I hope they don't see the crappy combat of Silent Hill 2 and, again, miss the point. The point being that you were supposed to feel awkward and ineffective in your offensive options. It is a bit funny, though, to think of the Silent Hill 2 remake. You see, one debate has raged on since the dawn of time, or at least since the creation of Silent Hill 2. And that's a debate about Pyramid Head. About whether he can possibly exist outside of James's need for him, a la the movies or his cameos in later games. Some fans like to screech that James manifested old Triangle Man to punish him, and thus it makes no sense for him to appear outside that game. Others like to bleat that the mannequin humper was a part of the town already, and is summoned when people need to be punished. This debate will likely rage once more, stoked by the flames of this remake. Both sides are kind of right in a way, but are missing the deeper truth. And I worry about Bloober putting a definitive answer in the game, as they will likely also miss the nuance. The nuance being, confirmed by tweets from the guy that literally created the character, that James saw a painting of some old executioners, and then threw his own guilt-ridden, sex-deprived coat of paint onto it. Kinda like how Bloober Team saw a successful horror project and then threw their own coat of paint onto it without grasping its depth. But hey, this has just been a random shower thought that has gone on for far too long. I'm going to end it now before the water gets cold and my fingers prune up. Thanks for watching.